Good evening. This is Monday, March the 7th at 7 p.m. and this is a meeting of the Troy City Council. My name is Tom Kendall and I'm acting president this evening. Please silence your phones, and Mr. Swayzer will be leading us in the invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we are gathered here tonight to deliberate the future of our city, guide our thoughts, our words, and our deeds as we make wise decisions so that our children and grandchildren will grow up in the same community we have all been blessed with. We ask for your blessing on all those who serve overseas, defending our freedoms so that they may come home safely to their families. We ask for your blessing on those who protect our homes and streets so they can also return to their loved ones safely. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Davis, could I ask you to shut the doors back there, please?
No, we can't shut the door.
Oh, we have to leave them open? Yeah. Okay, have to leave them open.
Tim?
Have to leave them open then. Sorry.
No, we've changed our mind.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just a little difficult hearing up here. Mrs. Knight, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Twist.
Here.
Mr. Tremblay.
Here.
Mr. Terwilliger.
Here.
Mrs. Snee.
Here.
Mr. Swayzer.
Here.
Mr. Phillips.
Here.
Mrs. Oda.
Here.
Mr. Kendall.
Here.
Mr. Heath.
Here.
All members of council are present.
Okay, thank you. Tonight we have 4 public hearings coming before this group. As a point of information, there will be a committee meeting tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock here in this room of the Community and Economic Development Committee that will be then open and addressing each of these different public hearing zoning codes. At that time, this committee group then will hear all questions and further discussion. Tonight's public hearing meeting is for the community to be able to express their opinions either for or against the zoning that's being considered. So, Mrs. Knight, will you please read ordinance number 08-2016?
Ordinance number 08-2016, ordinance changing the zoning of part of Outlot 436 in the city of Troy, Ohio from M2 Light Industrial District and R4 Single Family Residence District to the zoning of M2 Light Industrial District.
Okay. I'll declare this public hearing now open. Please remember that this public hearing is on the rezoning of the land from M2 and R4 to a single zoning of M2. Comments should be made regarding the subject of the zoning. So first we'll ask, does anyone wish to speak in favor of this rezoning?
Good evening.
Good evening. Please state your name and address.
Scott Missoula, 400 Trade Square East, Troy, Ohio. I represent the Hobart Institute of Welding Technology.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time. This rezoning is to extend our parking lot. The school is currently at 103% capacity, so we are over limit as far as students. So we are in a blessed position to be able to grow our business, which is great for the students, great for the employees, and certainly great for the city of Troy. We are currently sitting at 209 parking spaces today. Our new expansion is going to accommodate 108 new students. So we're looking to add, with this rezoning, an additional 116 total parking spaces for the school. We prefer to have the students park on the campus, not in the streets of the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor of this rezoning? Okay, does anyone wish to speak against this rezoning? Seeing none, I declare this public hearing closed. Okay, I'll declare open a public hearing on ordinance 092016. Mrs. Knight, will you please read that?
Ordinance number 09-2016, changing the zoning of in-lot 10577 in the city of Troy from the Miami County zoning of A2 and F1 to the city zoning of R4 Single Family Residential District. This is the property that had been known as the Hills Camp Farm, which was purchased by the city of Troy and is adjacent to Duke Park.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this rezoning? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this rezoning?
Buster Connor, 1210 South Clay Street, Troy, Ohio. Again, my question would be, how can, by changing the zoning, are you getting it out of the floodplain? If it's a flood area, it's a flood area. It doesn't change just because you rezone it. And you got on here for light single residential? I mean, you're going to build on that? I don't understand. Well, let me see if I'm looking at it right. Floodplain, two parcels, city property. Oh, okay, wrong. Single family residential district, Hollenkamp Farm. Are you going to try to build homes on that?
That has not been determined yet, no.
But that's, I mean, okay, can anybody up here give me an answer of how it becomes less of a flood area? How did it become out of the floodplain by rezoning it?
Mr. Tittery?
I would be glad to answer that question, even though it's a public hearing, we really are not supposed to. Mr. Conyers, this is the property that we purchased for the purpose of expanding Duke Park.
Right.
It's going to be parkland. That parkland, where the primary use of the parkland is concerned, it's not in the floodplain. There is an area that is adjacent to Great Miami River that is part of the floodplain. That eventually is going to be parceled off and sold to the Miami County Park District, who has received a grant and which will offset our costs of purchasing that portion of the land.
That's $7,000 an acre.
That is going to require the Park District to sign a non-development agreement and put it in a conservation easement so it will be passive parkland adjacent to Great Miami River. So as far as that's concerned, there won't be any residential development in that area.
Okay.
Okay, are there any further persons wanting to speak in opposition? Hearing no further comments, I declare this public hearing closed. Okay, I declare open a public hearing on ordinance 010-2016. Mrs. Knight, would you please read that?
Ordinance number 010-2016, ordinance changing zoning of in-lots 10575 and 10576 in the city of Troy, Ohio, from the Miami County, Ohio zoning of F1 floodplain to the city zoning of B1 local retail district. This is two small parcels adjacent to Treasure Island Park that are owned by the city.
Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this rezoning? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this rezoning?
Dr. Connor, 1210 South Clay Street, Troy, Ohio. Where is this property adjacent to Treasure Island? Where is that north?
It's north of the Marina Building.
Okay, that would be behind the old Buick transmission place. building?
Yes.
And that land, at one time, you found out was contaminated.
That land, when we took transfer from Hobart, there is a deed restriction that prohibits us from doing any kind of digging or building on that lot.
Then what are we going to do with that land?
It is going to be passive green space, meadowland, very low maintenance.
Okay.
Does anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this rezoning? Hearing none, I declare this public hearing closed. Okay, I'll declare open a public hearing on ordinance O-11-2016. Mrs. Knight, will you please read that?
Ordinance number 011-2016, ordinance amending sections 521 of the Ohio of the codified ordinances of the City of Troy, Ohio, and sections 1133 and 1151 of the zoning code related to fences. This provides clarification in the zoning code related to fences, and this is the first reading. I'm sorry, this is not the first reading, it's a public hearing.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak in favor of this ordinance? Does anyone wish to speak in opposition to this ordinance?
Lester Connor, 1210 South Clay Street, Troy, Ohio. I don't really understand what accessory structure is. Can you clarify what the accessory structure is?
Mr. Titterington?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. An accessory structure is a structure that's subservient to the principal structure on a property. That's probably the plainest way that I can put it.
Well, now, if you go buy a car and have accessories on it, there's always an extra cost because it's an accessory. Are you planning in somewhere down the line then to start putting a fee on people with fences because it's an accessory?
That
No,
yeah.
we have no intention in doing that.
At this time of point, you don't have any or none at all in the future? This perhaps is the first time, but I'm nearly speechless by your question. It's the most I'm
unusual
just a
zoning
common
question.
citizen, so you can get used to that.
I understand.
But I did graduate from
It's
the
not,
great Troy High.
we have always required a fence permit. We will continue to do that. There's no change in the permit fee. There's no new permit that would go on. There's no annual fee associated with owning a fence or any other accessory structure for that matter. I'm not aware of any community in Ohio that does that. Had not even contemplated it, to be honest. So no, there will not be an accessory ongoing fee associated with fences or any other accessory structures.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wish to speak in opposition to this rezoning? Hearing none, I declare this public meeting closed. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Knight, will you read the summary of the minutes from the February 16th meeting, please?
Minutes of Council, February 16, 2016, Committee Report, Safety and Health, reported regarding requiring owners of residential rental properties to equip rental properties with carbon monoxide detectors. There was a majority report to support the legislation and a minority report to not support the legislation. Streets and Sidewalks Committee recommended legislation be prepared authorizing final assessment Phase 8 sidewalk program. Committee recommended legislation be prepared authorizing an agreement for the design of the North Market Street Improvement Project. Utilities Committee reported that committee recommends legislation be prepared authorizing construction of a new water tower in the extra high service area. Resolution R7 2016 Design North Market Street Improvement Phase 2 was given first reading and adopted. Resolution number R8 2016 authorizing construction of a water tower was given first reading and adopted. Ordinance number 05 2016 final plat Nottingham subdivision second reading and adopted. Ordinance number 06, 2016, related to requiring carbon monoxide alarms, was given first reading and was adopted. Ordinance number 07, 2016, assessments for Phase 8 of the Sidewalk Improvement Program, was given first reading and was adopted. Ordinance number 08, 2016, a rezoning of an area requested by the Hobart Institute of Welding Technology, first reading. Ordinance number 09, 2016, zoning of the Hules Camp Farm, was given first reading. Ordinance number 010, 2016, rezoning of 2 parcels next to Treasure Island Park, was given first reading. Ordinance number 011, 2016, regarding amending the zoning code related to fences, was given first reading. Following various comments, council adjourned at 7:38 p.m.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding the minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to approve the minutes in a second. Mr. Phillips made the motion. Mr. Twist made the second. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the roll?
Mr. Tremblay.
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger.
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed. Yes. Mr. Swayzer.
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
Mrs. Oda. Yes. Mr. Kendall.
Yes.
Mr. Heath.
Yes.
Mr. Twist.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. Now we move into committee reports. First this evening, we have the Community and Economic Development Committee and Mr. Twist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This committee met on February 16th regarding the recommendation of the Troy Planning Commission that the final plat of Section 8 of Edgewater subdivision be approved. The plat is in general accordance with the approved preliminary plan. There will be a total of 20 building lots in Section 8. This is the final section of this subdivision, and it is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared accepting the final plat of Edgewater subdivision, Section 8, as presented, including the dedication of the right-of-way. And that's respectfully submitted by Tom Kendall, John Swayzer, and myself as chair, William Twist.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Twist. Anyone have any questions or comments regarding this committee report? Anything else?
Nope, that is it.
Okay, thank you. Now we move to the Finance Committee, and I've asked Mr. Tremblay to please read that report.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. The Finance Committee met on February 29th to review the request that some excess public property be declared surplus and offered for sale. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared declaring the below listing as surplus items no longer needed for a public purpose and authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to advertise for the sale of these items. This is respectively submitted by Mr. Swayzer, Mr. Tremblay, and Mr. Kendall as chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tremblay. Anyone have any questions, comments? Okay, anything else at this
Nothing
time?
further for the finance.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to Streets and Sidewalks, Mr. Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem Chair. On March 3rd, this Streets and Sidewalks Committee met to review the bidding request for the McCaig Road Improvement Project Phase 3. The project area is McCaig Road from Madison Street to the alley west of Lake Street. The project scope includes roadway reconstruction, utilities, new LED school zone signals, retaining walls if necessary, and sidewalk curb and gutter. $525,000 of the project will be funded by a grant from the Ohio Public Works Commission. The final design estimate is $1.5 million. This exceeds the budgeted amount, which was based on a 2-year-old estimate and did not include replacement of the school zone signals or storm sewers. A future reappropriation may be required, but funds are available within the applicable funds. It is the recommendation of the committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the McCaig Road Improvement Project Phase 3 at a cost not to exceed $1.5 million. And this is respectfully submitted by Councilman Heath, Councilwoman Snee, and myself as chairman.
Okay, are there any questions, comments? Okay, please continue, Mr. Phillips.
On a second item, the same committee met on February 29th. This committee met to consider recommending the resolution of necessity for Phase 9 of the sidewalk replacement program. Phase 9 includes 120 parcels as described on the detailed report. These property owners would be given a time period to obtain a permit for the work to do themselves. Thereafter, the repairs would be made by, and if not If they did not take it upon themselves to do it thereafter, the repairs would be made by the city. It is the recommendation of this committee that the resolution of necessity be prepared regarding the sidewalks in Phase 9 of the sidewalk replacement program, and this again is respectfully submitted by Councilman Heath, Councilwoman Snee, and myself as chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anyone, any questions, comments? All right, next we'll move on to the Utilities Commission, or Committee, and Mr. Tremblay.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. On February 29th, this committee met to review a request regarding transferring the water tank maintenance agreement from Caldwell Tanks Incorporated to Utility Service Company Incorporated, USCI. USCI would continue the terms of the existing maintenance agreements and honor all the terms and conditions. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety to execute a request for consent to assignment form related to each of the agreements with Caldwell Tanks Incorporated, so that Caldwell Tanks Incorporated may transfer the water tank maintenance agreement to Utility Service Company Incorporated. And this is respectfully submitted by Mr. Terwilliger, Mr. Twist, and myself as chair.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments regarding this? Please continue.
Thank you. Utilities Committee met on February 29th to review the request for the acceptance of easements in front of the Meyer store at 1910 West Main Street, so that 3 additional lots can be established and provided with water and sanitary sewer. We understand that one of the lots will be the location of the Chick-fil-A restaurant. It is the recommendation of this committee that legislation be prepared accepting the dedication of the 2 water line easements and 1 sanitary sewer easement for the development of the 3 proposed lots at 1910 West Main Street. We support emergency legislation so that construction can proceed without delay. And this is respectfully submitted by Mr. Terwilliger, Mr. Twist, and myself as chair.
Okay, thank you. Again, any questions or comments regarding this report? All right, thank you, Mr. Tremblay.
You're welcome.
Okay, at this point in our meeting, we will move to citizen comments on committee reports or agenda items, and you will be limited to 2 minutes, and I will be asking Mr. Kerber to act as our timekeeper. So if anyone has any comments, please come forward. Okay. Seeing none, we'll move into resolutions. And Mrs. Knight, will you please read resolution number R9, 2016?
Resolution number R9, 2016, resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to execute requests for consent to assignment forms to transfer 2 water tank maintenance agreements from Caldwell Tanks, Inc. to Utility Service Company, Inc. for the Hurlinger Water Tower, the Stanfield Road Water Tower, and the Barnhart Road Water Tower. This is the first reading.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this?
I move to suspend the rules.
Okay, we got a move for suspension for Mr. Tremblay and a second for Mr. Phillips. Mrs. Knight, will you call the roll, please?
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Swayzer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion for Mr. Swayzer and a second for Mr. Twist. For adoption, Mrs. Knight, will you please read the roll?
Mrs. Snee?
Yes.
Mr. Swayzer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Knight, will you please read resolution number R10, 2016?
Resolution number R10, 2016, resolution declaring the necessity of Phase 9 of the sidewalk replacement program in the city of Troy, Ohio. This is the first step of the process. Following approval of this, the property owners will be given notification. This is the first reading.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this resolution?
Move for suspension.
Second.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
You didn't hear me. I was just going to ask, do we know, Joe, when those letters will go out, or how soon? In 2 weeks. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so now. Okay, we got a motion to suspend from Mr. Phillips and a second from Mr. Heath. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the roll?
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion for adoption from Mr. Swazer and a second from Mr. Tremblay. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the roll?
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Knight, will you please read resolution number R11, 2016?
Resolution number R11, 2016, resolution authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Troy, Ohio, to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the McCaig Road Improvement Project Phase 3, cost not to exceed $1,500,000, first reading.
Okay, does anyone have any questions regarding this?
Yes, Mr. President, I have one question. This redesign, or is there any way that this is redesigning the intersections where Ridge Avenue come in by the school?
No, that would be a
Just
future
like it is.
project. No. The only comment that was made in the report is that in the design work for the utilities on McCaig, where we are replacing, upsizing, or modernizing, we just wanted to let everybody know that when and if that project is ever approved and financed, then we will be in a position to move those utilities or relocate those utilities accordingly. This project does not include any reconstruction of that intersection.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Swazer and a second by Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes. Move for adoption.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion for adoption from Mr. Phillips and a second from Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snead?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Resolution is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Now we move to ordinances, and Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance number 08, 2016?
Ordinance number 08, 2016. Ordinance changing the zoning of part of Outlot 436, parcel D08-100-722 and parcel D08-100-730 in the city of Troy, Ohio from M2 Light Industrial District and R4 Single Family Residence District to the zoning of M2 Light Industrial District. This has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission. A public hearing was held this evening. This is the second reading.
Okay, this will go to a third reading, and the committee meeting to look into this will be tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock here in the council chambers. Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance number 09, 2016?
Ordinance number 09, 2016. Ordinance changing the zoning of in-lot 10577 in the city of Troy, Ohio, from the Miami County zoning of A2 and F1 to the city zoning of R4 Single Family Residence District. This is the zoning of the land known as the Hules Camp Farm to apply a city zoning to the land owned by the city. There was a public hearing this evening. This has been recommended by the Troy Planning Commission, and this is the second reading.
Okay, this too will go to a third reading, and again, the committee meeting is tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance O-10, 2016?
Ordinance O-10, 2016, ordinance changing the zoning of in-lots 10575 and 10576 in the city of Troy, Ohio, from the Miami County zoning of F1 floodplain to the city zoning of B1 local retail district. This is the zoning of 2 parcels adjacent to Treasure Island Park, owned by the city to apply a city zoning, has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission. Had a public hearing this evening. This is the second reading.
Again, this will go to a third reading and will be addressed in tomorrow evening's committee meeting at 6 o'clock. And Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance O-11, 2016?
Ordinance number O-11, 2016, an ordinance amending sections 521 of the codified ordinances of the city of Troy, Ohio, and sections 1133 and 1151 of the zoning code of the city of Troy, Ohio, related to fences. This has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission. Had a public hearing this evening. This is the second reading.
Okay, and this also will go to a third reading and will be addressed in tomorrow evening's committee meeting. Okay, Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance O-12, 2016?
Ordinance number O-12, 2016, ordinance accepting the final plat of the Edgewater subdivision, Section 8, in the city of Troy, Ohio, and dedicating a right-of-way. This has been recommended for approval by the Troy Planning Commission. This is the first reading.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this legislation?
Motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Twist and a second by Mr. Tremblay. Mrs. Knight, will you please read the roll?
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion for adoption from Mr. Swazer and a second from Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance O-13, 2016?
Ordinance number O-13, 2016, an ordinance authorizing the redemption of the city's outstanding various purpose refunding bonds, Series 2005, and declaring an emergency. These are 2 bonds that are being paid off ahead of time at a savings of approximately $70,000 in interest. First reading.
Are there any questions regarding this legislation?
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to suspend by Mr. Tremblay and a second by Mr. Swazer. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion for adoption from Mr. Swazer and a second from Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance O-14, 2016?
Ordinance number O-14, 2016, ordinance declaring municipally owned personal property as no longer needed for sale for municipal purposes and authorizing the sale of such excess property. This would authorize the sale of a few vehicles and pieces of equipment, including a 1991 fire truck. This is the first reading.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this?
Move to suspend. Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Mr. Swazer to suspend the rules and a second by Mr. Heath. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mrs. Sneed?
Yes.
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Terwilliger?
Yes.
Move to adopt. Second.
Okay, we got a motion for adoption by Mr. Heath and a second by Mr. Swazer. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee? Yes. Ordinance is adopted.
Okay. Mrs. Knight, would you please read ordinance O-15, 2016?
Ordinance number 015, 2016. Ordinance accepting the dedication of water line easements and a sanitary sewer easement within Lot 8740, located at the intersection of West Main Street and Stanfield Road, and declaring an emergency. The location of these easements would be in front of the Meyer store. This is the first reading.
Okay, are there any questions regarding this legislation?
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion from Mr. Tremblay to suspend the rules and a second from Mr. Twist. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee? Yes. Mr. Swazer?
Yes. Move to adopt.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to adopt by Mr. Swazer and a second by Mr. Heath. Mrs. Knight, would you please read the roll?
Mrs. Oda?
Yes.
Mr. Kendall?
Yes.
Mr. Heath?
Yes.
Mr. Twist?
Yes.
Mr. Tremblay?
Yes.
Mr. Twilliger?
Yes.
Mrs. Snee? Yes. Mr. Swazer?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ordinance is adopted.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other ordinances or resolutions come before, Mrs. Knight, is there any communications or announcements?
Just the ongoing reminder of elected officials to file the financial disclosure statements. That is all.
Okay. Mayor Beamish.
Mr. President Pro Tem, thank you. As many of us all know, we in our community lost a respected educator, coach, and certainly a dedicated citizen of Troy in Chuck Barrett. I just wanted to share that because I had the opportunity to know him, work with him, and that is a loss to our community and to the educational community as well. But on the good side, we have a couple of, if you haven't known, first of all, the girls' gymnastics team went to the state and placed 6th, and that's the highest placing that they've had. And then to add to the excitement, big congratulations to the women's bowling team who came back with the state championship. I think that's great for our community. They had a great weekend, and certainly we want to congratulate them and their efforts, and it looks like they have a strong future as well. That's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Tibbington, the Director of Public Service and Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just draw your attention to a couple of items in the items of interest. First of all, we did have a couple of bid openings that went very well. The Clopay State Route 55 stoplight came in under bid, and we've awarded to the low bidder. We also opened bids for the screw pumps at the wastewater treatment plant, and those bids came in substantially lower than our engineer's estimate. So those were a couple of positive bid openings. And then the other item I would draw your attention to is next Monday, 2 weeks in advance of when we would normally open, we are opening the dye mill facility at the yard waste facility. We'll have the same hourly and daily schedule as last year, but again, we're opening it 2 weeks early, given some of the unusual weather that we've had in the past and some of the questions that we've received. Of course, now that I say that, we'll go into May with snowy weather, but knock on wood, we are opening starting next Monday. I believe that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Director of Law, Mr. Kerber.
I have nothing this evening, Mr. President.
Okay. Auditor, Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Kendall. I'd like to thank Mrs. Knight, Mrs. Baker, and the council members for taking quick action on authorizing us to pay off the 2 bonds early it will save us a substantial amount of interest. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fricke. I would like to just say, don't forget next Tuesday, the 15th, primary here in Ohio. You know, whatever your thinking is, your vote is important. So please get out and exercise your right. Anyone on council?
Yes, Mr. President. I just want to say congratulations to Tim Davis. He was awarded the Outstanding Young Man of the Year this past week. Your year on the crown there. That's all I've got.
It goes by quick, Tim. All right. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Phillips?
If I may, following on that, I'd like to congratulate Melissa Nichols from Riverside Developmental Disabilities, who also won the Chamber Outstanding Young Woman of the Year award. She is an asset not only to RDD but to several other organizations, and one being near and dear to my heart, the Miracle League. So she is well deserving of that award. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Any city staff? Okay, anyone in the audience? Okay, seeing none, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.